Okay, it's 11:30, so welcome to our Sunday seminar. I'm your hostess this week, Sue Hatch, and the Sunday seminar topic, as you probably already know, is if masking becomes voluntary, should you send your children back to school? This seminar is being recorded and will be posted later on our UCG YouTube channel for general viewing. So you should be aware that that's going to take place if you make any comments. All right, we have three outstanding panelists who'll speak on this issue. If you have any questions that you wish to share or ask, or anything you'd like to share, please, I ask you to put your questions in the chat box. I'll return to them after our three panelists have had a chance, each one, to share. Okay, so I'm going to introduce, we're going to go in this order. We're going to first listen to Dr. March. He's going to be our first panelist, and we have a lot of ground to cover. So let me get to this quickly, and I want to get to what Dr. March has to say. Dr. Alan March, who is known to many of us through his tireless research and reporting as one of our two COVID doctors for UCG, actually has a 50-year medical career. It's encompassed primary care, sports medicine, hospital accreditation, managed care, and public service. He has a Facebook page titled Make America Healthier, devoted to preventative care, and continues whenever he can to empower consumers to reduce their risk for preventable diseases. Dr. March will speak to us today from the medical perspective, discussing the virus and tracing the timeline of our state leaders' response to the virus and its effect in our schools. Then he will address the specific choices you as a parent have to make. He's developed an extremely useful decision tree to help inform you in making these difficult decisions. Dr. March, thank you for agreeing to be part of our panel today.
Thank you, Sue. I want to make sure I'm not on mute. And regarding your last comment, the decision tree came directly from the Alachua County Public School website, so I don't take credit for that.
All right.
Regarding the pandemic, we thought we had seen the last of it in January with our last surge, and things were starting to get better over the spring, but now the Delta variant, which is much more highly transmissible, has entered the picture and swept over Florida. In the local county, we now, in the first week of classes, 52 students tested positive and 23 staff members tested positive. So we have over 500 students are now quarantined, and 78 staff members of the public schools are now in quarantine. And this is not a reflection of the mandate for masking, but it's a reflection of the very high prevailing rate of community transmission of the Delta variant. So I'm going to go to the slides.
Would you like me to post those?
Yes, if you would, please.
Sure.
So,
sorry, it's being
no, that's okay. I'll go ahead and start.
A little bit difficult. Go ahead.
The question is, if masking becomes voluntary, should I send my child to school? And first, I want to address some of the false myths that drive the behavior of people. And I think this is very important because we have a number of people who have sincerely tried to get information. They've just used the wrong sources and they're misinformed. So we need to understand their perspective in order to deal with the general public. The second, I want to trace the history of our public conversation between the governor and the school districts. Third, I want to give you kind of an upbeat guideline of what parents can actually do if the masking requirement is withdrawn by the school board. And finally, I have posted the decision tree for the students in case they're exposed or they have a positive test or they become symptomatic with COVID-19. How are we doing, Sue?
I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of difficulty. I'm getting there as fast as I can.
That's all right.
I'll get there just as fast as I can.
I'll keep going. So
okay.
Alan, would you like to just possibly post the links on the chat at this point, and maybe we could refer to those?
Yes, I will do that.
Okay, I think they're up now, Alan. Can everybody see the slides? Yes? Okay. All right.
Okay. Let's go to the next slide.
All right.
Some of the false myths that drive behavior. The first is one can only spread the COVID virus if one is sick. Unfortunately, 50% or more of people who are transmitting the virus to other people have absolutely no symptoms. So they're totally unaware. Second misconception, masks primarily protect the people wearing them. The reason that the CDC recommends masks is to impede the emission of the virus particles on little water droplets coming out of your mouth when you speak and shout and sing and do all those wonderful things that children like to do. So the masks are primarily to protect others. They do provide some protection for the person wearing them. Another misconception, vaccinated people can't spread the virus. This was true with the old virus, but now with the new variant, we've seen experience from Provincetown, Massachusetts, where vaccinated people are shown to spread the virus. Now, they may carry the virus. First of all, they're people who are vaccinated are much less likely of acquiring the virus in the first place. And if they do become transmissible, it's likely that their duration of their transmission is shorter. That's all on the good side, but they still can spread the virus. Another misconception, the current COVID-19 surge is merely a seasonal variation. No, this is very distinctly a result of the emergence of the Delta variant, which was first identified back in the late spring in India. Another misconception, children don't transmit or get sick from the COVID-19 virus. Well, it seems that the Delta variant is even more highly transmissible in children than the old variants. So this is a problem now that we didn't anticipate. Also, here in Alachua County, if you just look at the hospitalized children at Shands Hospital, yesterday they had 9 pediatric patients admitted because of COVID-19, 6 of whom were in the ICU. So that just tells you what's happening. We've got to take this seriously. And then final misconception, vaccination is the only effective weapon against the current surge. All these other modalities of mitigating the virus spread are also effective, but vaccination is probably at the top of the preference to help contain the virus. But masking has also been proven to be very effective. And it's been found in schools that the spacing at 3 feet appears to be adequate. The 6-foot spacing when wearing masks may not be necessary in schools. Now let's go to the next slide, the history of the public conversation. Things were getting better in the spring, and so anticipating that we shouldn't have to be wearing masks, the state legislature passed House Bill 241, the Parents' Bill of Rights. And this was signed into law by the governor on June 29th. And in that law, it says that parents' rights cannot be infringed without a compelling, narrowly tailored state interest, not otherwise served by less restrictive means. So this whole idea was to give parents more power of controlling the behavior of their children and not leaving it up to the schools or the CDC to control their children's behavior. July 30th, the governor issued an executive order, number 21-175, that prohibited county school boards from imposing mask requirements on students. And if they did, that the school boards would face withdrawal of state funding. So that was in an executive order. Just the following week, the Alachua County School Board met on August 3rd, and they were voting to approve their plan on how to open their schools, and observing the high surge of cases from the COVID variant, they voted to impose a mask requirement for all children, all staff members, all faculty, all visitors, and all vendors. So that's a very inclusive masking requirement. And it was only going to be imposed for 2 weeks, and they were going to re-examine this in hopes that the surge would end soon. But I don't think we've reached the peak of the surge yet. It may come at the end of this month. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Then in response to that, on August 6th, an emergency rule was issued by the Department of Education that extended the Hope scholarships, which are designed to allow children who are facing bullying and harassment in a school to transfer to another school and get public funding to do so. And they extended these Hope scholarships, which can amount to $66,000 or $7,000 a year, for children who are subject to harassment resulting from COVID-19 mitigation protocols. Now, it didn't say whether they were strict or lenient mitigation protocols, just any type of mitigation protocol which was felt to be harassful. So this is important, taking note of this. In the next slide, I'll go into more detail. Then on August 9th, the governor's office said that that the Board of Education could withhold the salaries of the district superintendent and school board members if they failed to comply with the executive order back on whatever it was, July 30th. Now, since then, the governor's found that he doesn't have quite the power to withhold salaries. So that has been walked back. But on the same day, Richard Corcoran, the commissioner for the Department of Education, sent a letter to Dr. Carly Simons, the superintendent of the Alachua County Public Schools, asking for an explanation of why they are mandating masks for everybody in the public schools. So Carly Simon immediately replied and thought, well, I'll go ahead and send my letter of response to the Washington Post, which was quite interested in her response and immediately posted this on their website, explaining the reasons for their mask requirement. So that kind of brings us up to date. Now, let's focus on what parents can do. I want to be upbeat on this. There are things that parents can do if the school district either voluntarily or is forced to withdraw the masking requirement. First is to get everybody in your family who is eligible vaccinated. And that includes the children over age 12. And the school board has listed all the vaccination sites and they are making this available to children over age 12 throughout the county. Make sure your child has access to clean multi-layer fabric masks. Just a bit of housekeeping for all the moms and dads who don't have enough housekeeping chores already. Next is to complete a testing consent form, which is available on the Alachua County Public School COVID-19 health and safety website. And I'll post the link to that later. Now, the other thing you can do is obtain a voucher to get a scholarship for your child and attend a school that requires masks. I mentioned that the mitigation protocol doesn't specify whether it's lenient. Well, that's my 12 minutes.
Keep
whether,
keep going.
Whether it's the mitigation requirement is too lenient or too stringent. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So this law applies to all parents. So if the school board withdraws the requirement and you want your child to go to a private school that requires masking, you can send them now to Oak Hall, to St. Patrick's, to St. Francis, to the Montessori school. There are lots of schools in Alachua County which require masks in the private. Now, unfortunately, PK Young does not. So I checked that out. Next is for the parent to do is to monitor what the level of community transmission is. And we're deep into the red zone. And you can follow this at the Florida Health COVID-19.gov website. And that provides a weekly situation report, which also you can find the results of that if you access events on the UCG website every week. I post the results of that. So, but if you want to get it on a Saturday when it becomes available, you have to go right to the website because we don't post this until Tuesday night or Wednesday. And then, of course, monitor the news to see when the vaccine is available for 5 to 11-year-olds, the elementary school students. And finally, be a positive role model by wearing your mask indoors, except when home. Now, if we go to the next slide, this is just a quick overview. I'll make these slides available at the end if people have specific questions, but I will provide a link to the decision tree in the, what is that, the comments section. I'm going to try and do that in just a minute here. And if you go to the next slide on the decision tree, and then to the final summary slide, I'm going to post also all of the links on the COVID Nugget. If you go to that final slide, Sue.
Oh, sure. Yes.
Yeah. Those of you who view the weekly COVID Nugget, you'll see this friendly symbol as we nibble away at this terrible virus which has invaded our land. I will be posting on the COVID Nugget this week, which will be posted either Tuesday night or Wednesday morning under events, the UCGainesville.org events. You'll see this little nugget, and I'll have the links posted there too. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you so much. That was great, Dr. March, and I'm sorry that we had to cut you off a little bit there. I really appreciate that information. I would like to now introduce our second speaker of the day, Virginia Stiegel, who goes by Ginger. Ginger is a licensed marriage and family therapist who has worked in the field of mental health for 35 years. She attended the University of Florida, go Gators, and has furthered her education through study at the Gainesville Family Institute. Ginger will speak to us today as a mental health expert who is currently seeing parents making the same difficult decisions that you are. She will help remind us that there are other issues other than physical health that need to be taken into account when making schooling decisions for our children. There is the need to consider the impact of these mental health decisions on your children and on your family. Thank you, Ginger, for agreeing to speak to us today.
Thank you very much. I have worked, and basically I've been in the field of psychology and mental health for a long time, a little over 35 years. And I work with two populations. I work telehealth, because I have two immunocompromised people at home. So I do my very best to stay healthy myself. I also work with the Department of Corrections, people on probation for substance abuse. And the stuff I hear every day about vaccines and about, I'm actually in the trenches, and the stuff I hear every day about masks, about vaccinations, about all of the ways we can keep ourselves safe. People are refusing to believe it. it's they believe that, I mean, I heard just yesterday that the vaccines change your DNA, and there needs to be more research done for the vaccines, whatever. So I'm just bringing to you the fact that there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of conflictual information that makes it difficult for people to make choices. And following Dr. March, I think you're very aware of the fact that vaccines are very helpful, and wearing masks is essential. And but the first thing I want you to know as parents is that you have choices, and each and every one of you need to be able to make those choices based on what your family needs. And but it's very important not to be afraid of vaccines or poo-poo mask wearing, because, for example, surgeons wear masks, and they get they wash their hands, and people put gloves on them. They don't touch them. And they found that the spread of anything that the person wasn't being operated on for basically was cut down, fantastically, by the fact that they started doing these practices. And so mask wearing is not new. It's not oppressive. It has nothing to do with taking away your civil liberties. It's a collective reaction to a public health crisis. And it's very important that we all act together in order to do what Dr. March said, eat away at COVID and get it out of our country, or get it out of the world. And it's a naturally occurring virus. A lot of people think it's been built, I mean, there are a lot of people who still believe all this stuff, is what I'm trying to tell you, that it was made in a lab, that it's the China virus. I mean, I can't tell you how much misinformation has been spread that is damaging our collective response. So, the pandemic has also created unprecedented division among American citizens. These divisions are most prevalent surrounding the issues of wearing masks and getting vaccinated for the coronavirus. History has shown that mental health impact of disasters outlasts the physical impact, suggesting that today's elevated mental health need will continue well beyond the current public health crisis outbreak itself. For an example, an analysis of the psychological toll on healthcare providers during outbreaks found that psychological distress can last up to 3 years after the outbreak is managed. This is tantamount to post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a disaster. It's out of our control. I mean, due to the financial crisis accompanying the pandemic, there are also significant implications for mortality due to homelessness, poverty, and deaths of despair. And I don't know exactly what each of you are grappling with or having difficulty with, but the start of the school year has much less structure to it than last year. There were in-place options, and we're coming to that late in this school year, and a lot of people have been very anxious. This situation is not about civil rights or individual rights. It's about being collective in our approach to eradicating or taming a virus that is controlling us at this moment rather than us controlling it. A family medicine doctor in Ohio said, "I vacillate between anguish and anger. We live in an era of unprecedented scientific breakthrough and expertise, but we are also stymied by the forces of misinformation that is undermining the true knowledge that is out there." If you have not looked at the scientific information about this virus for yourself, then you must. If you are listening to hearsay and rumors that have no basis in reason or fact, start vetting your information. Find the real source. I believe the true information exists, and Dr. March said so too. I am vaccinated. I have worn a mask since March 2020, and I practice sanitizing surfaces in my hands all of the time. I have never contracted the virus, even though at the beginning I was working in the largest women's prison in the United States. Wow. I have never, I myself have 2 immunocompromised people at home and cannot afford to get sick. Just remember, this is a public health crisis. We need to combat it collectively, not with division. As long as we are fighting each other in the masses, we will be subject to a great deal of harm and diversion from what we really need to be paying attention to. And I don't know if you can show those.
Yes. What would you like to see first?
Either one of them. They're both really much the same thing. But I wanted you to know that I have two photos, 2 images that show you the level, basically the level of contraction based on wearing masks. Okay, this isn't based on immunization. It's just that it goes from high risk, and all on the right-hand side are healthy people, okay, and then on the left-hand side are the carriers. And, you know, they're carriers without symptoms, just to let you know. And then, so the highest risk is nobody wears a mask. Moderate risk if the healthy person is wearing a mask. And then it goes down significantly when the carrier wears a mask. And then it gets much lower when both people wear masks. And then the lowest is when you social distance as well. Okay. So you do have, you know, ability within yourself to do something about getting sick. Okay. So that's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Ginger. Really appreciate you speaking today. And now, last but certainly not least, I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Danielle Nelson. Many of you know her simply as Danielle, one of your United Tribe parents. In her professional capacity, she is a professor of family practice at the University of Florida. She also holds a master's in public health and has worked overseas in a number of countries, including Bangladesh, Haiti, and Zimbabwe when they were experiencing cholera outbreaks. But as you read in the newsletter, Dr. Nelson said none of these experiences prepared her for the last year and a half. I loved that, Danielle, and just had to quote it.
No problem.
However, as impressive as her medical background is, I've asked Dr. Nelson to speak to us today primarily as the parent of a 10-year-old and to focus on the problems and issues she has faced and perhaps anticipates facing in the future when making schooling decisions for her daughter. Thank you, Dr. Nelson, for agreeing to speak. And I see that we have a bonus panelist.
Yeah, so I invited my husband, Dr. Eric Nelson, to also join. He's a pediatrician and a research scientist at UF, and obviously also the father of our daughter. So, yeah.
Thank you, Eric. We get a twofer. Thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and just recap. Thanks for the wonderful intro, and then it's nice to hear Dr. Marsh and Ginger. I think I want to echo a lot of the same things that they said. Just to recap, we are very much in a surge. This is the highest number of patients we've had at Shands. Oh, and just another aside, both of us work in the hospital at Shands, Eric on the pediatric side and myself on the adult medicine side. I primarily work though in the outpatient setting in family medicine clinic. And so we kind of, between the two of us, cover a lot of the different perspectives in terms of clinical care. I've been taking care of COVID patients basically since last April, and Eric's only recently had the pleasure of having pediatric patients admitted. But all to say that we very much are in a surge. This is a high time in terms of hospitalizations, and it's stressing the system in terms of we are already at a kind of unique point in the pandemic. It's been a year and a half, but this is the first time that we've pulled residents from different services to help with the intensive care unit care. We've expanded intensive care unit locations, and we're really seeing a large number, and people are getting stressed. Within that is also a ongoing nursing and respiratory therapist shortage. And then to make matters even worse, now we're seeing a lot more pediatric patients admitted to the hospital as well. And, you know, I'm was always taught in medical students that children are not just little adults. And we are seeing that they are acting differently in the hospital than some of our cases that we had last year, or even ongoing now. So all to say that the vaccines are very important. There are still, like Ginger mentioned, there's a lot of vaccine hesitancy out there. And I think the biggest message I would have about that is if you're someone who feels strongly, or that you know about vaccines and you've gotten a vaccine yourself, you know, talking with friends and family in a non-judgmental way, encouraging them to speak to their doctor. This is much more useful than, you know, attacks on social media or telling people that they're stupid. A lot of people have gathered information and made different decisions. I think one thing that I would just stress for some people who've said, well, I've been okay thus far, is like Dr. March said, this is a higher risk of transmission and more infectious agent that we were dealing with before. So the kind of balance between that risk benefit has changed. And I would encourage people who are on the fence because of that to think about getting it. And a lot of people are. We've seen an increase in vaccinations again with this new surge. So then secondly, about masks, I agree. They are protective. You know, they're uncomfortable. Nobody loves wearing a mask. I hate wearing an N95 mask for 4 hours straight in clinic. But I'd encourage people who don't like wearing a mask to just try lots of different kinds and find the one that works for you. And same with talking with friends and family members who don't like to wear a mask, just having an open mind and talking or sharing tips about how you were able to navigate that is the best way. And then finally, I want to talk, echo a lot of the things that were just said about mental health. So this, like I said, nothing's prepared me for the last 18 months, because this really is a collective trauma that we're all going through. And for everyone, that's very different, right? So for some people, their jobs were taken away, their, you know, schools were shut down. For other people, it's just an ongoing fear of getting sick. For other people, it's feeling trapped in their own homes and not having the normal, you know, activities and things like that. And that is different for everybody and needs to be acknowledged and kind of respected. But I think for kids, this is such every week, month, year is almost intensified in that developmental process they're going through. And so we saw with our daughter back in March and April of 2020, really just a struggle with online school in terms of just even engaging. You know, it's not the same as being in a classroom. So being on Zoom, trying to coordinate, you know, me spending time making her a schedule and making sure she knew when the Zooms were and things like that. but then also just feeling engaged or connected. And so, and then their social development is so important too at this stage. So being around other kids and being in that environment can be really crucial. So, you know, I have had this conversation with a lot of different families, and what I would say, bottom line, is that everyone needs to make the decision that's right for them, but not negating the importance of kids being in school, right? And so the ideal is that we make schools as safe as possible so that everybody feels comfortable attending school, who that's something that's beneficial for their children. I do have to do a disclosure, which is that our daughter attends Brentwood. She was at Littlewood before. The last 2 years she's been at Brentwood, and Brentwood does have a mask mandate. And I guess, but the point being, as I've had the discussion with other families, is it may come to a fact where you say, okay, well, in our family, everybody's, you know, the adults are vaccinated, the elementary school kids really need to be in school, and you may have to accept a more than zero risk of getting COVID, you know, with that serenity prayer of controlling what you can control. And so I think, you know, trying to do as much as possible as you can, and then understanding that sometimes the more than zero risk of COVID is better in the long run for the child in terms of mental health and learning and development. So that's kind of my preamble. I'm going to let Eric say a few words. Do you have any?
Well, I have more than a few words, but I guess the question is, how many minutes do I have?
3, 5.
I guess maybe at the end, if there's time, I can go into it. But I just want to echo what Danielle said. And I think one of the major kind of metaphors I've been working on in my mind is that if you want to pick fire or a boat analogy or medical analogy, you know, you need to put out the fire, you need to put your finger in the hole in the boat, or you need to stop the bleeding. What you should not be doing is adding more wood to the fire, drilling more holes in the boat, or cutting off the other arm. And so I've mentally moved above worrying about masks from what I've seen across my whole domain, both on the research and the medical side, and then thinking about, you know, additional interventions, be it social distancing, be it improving our access to data so we can make smart decisions. All of these things are important, because I think that we need to move out of this mindset of, you know, these interventions aren't forever. If you look at the curve the Emerging Pathogens Institute put out earlier this week on their website, there is a curve that goes up and it comes down. And I think there's a lot to learn from other countries that have dealt with Delta. And so we don't have to make this a forever, you know, intervention. We need to cool this down for a few weeks, see where we're at, and then kind of go stepwise as we get to a homeostasis, balance with this story. And on the school side, the other comment I was going to make is that the health and strength and support of the public school system is essential to the fabric of this country. And the decisions that are being made by the parents, by the county leaders and the state leaders will affect the fabric, the demographic of the schools, the finances of the school going long into the future. So I don't want the message to be that you need to pull your kids out of a school to go to a private school because there's no mask mandate. I think that's the wrong mindset. I think that we need to understand that we have a crisis, and that crisis is clearly for the next 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Let's do the smart thing, mask in the schools, keep that investment in the school, and get through this period and kind of focus on that. And I'm really hoping that we don't get into a dichotomy of in-person school in a public school without masking versus some other alternative. I'm really hoping that we don't get there.
Yeah. And I also, I'm still hopeful that the school board's already made a very difficult decision to kind of stand up against the governor. And so I'm hopeful that now that they've done that, they'll continue to extend the mask mandate for as long as is necessary based on the numbers. So that's, I think we all need to kind of take a deep breath when things are getting scary, and it's hard to, but so far the school board has acted in the best interest of the children.
And along those lines, I think that when people make a hard decision that's in the best interest of the public health of the community, we need to support them and do whatever we can to thank them for making that difficult decision, because I know at the county level, there have been some hard decisions made and there's been a lot of stress associated with that. And those are laudable actions.
All right, thank you too. That was wonderful. Thank you. That was great. Thank you both for sharing your perspective, both as doctors and working on the front lines and as parents. That's wonderful. I'm going to go to questions and answers now, but not before I make a shameless pitch for the seminar committee. People out there, parents who are listening, we could really use a representative from your group on our seminar committee. And if you want more seminars like this that are focused on topics of interest to you, I really implore you, please consider coming and becoming a member. It's a fun group. I can guarantee you that. We only meet once a month and we do it on Zoom. So you don't even have to put your mask on. And we could just really use your input. So you think of this as like your intellectual break. I know when I had small children, I needed intellectual breaks. Well, none of us on the committee have small children. I think I may be the youngest on the committee and mine are in their late 20s. So we could really stand somebody to stand in and volunteer to be on this committee. We'd really appreciate your input. If you're so moved, I'll put my email in to the chat box. And also you could just chat me if you want, if you feel like you could take on that task. So I know I've gotten ahead of time and talent, but I'm making my pitch first. All right, thank you all for speaking. Now I'm going to go to the chat room. Anybody who's put something in the chat, I'm going to take a look at it. If you've specifically asked to speak to one speaker or to address the question to one of our panelists, then I'll make note of that. Otherwise, I'll just throw it open to the panelists. Anybody else who wants to ask a question or share, if you can put it in the chat room, that's great. If you would like to just raise your hand in your box or raise your virtual hand, I'll try my best to get around to you. So let's open up chat here. Okay. All right, I see first of all that Mary Applin has posted the Washington Post opinion, which is an excellent piece written by our school superintendent, Dr. Simon. I urge everybody to read that. It's in the Washington Post op-ed. She's posted the link to that. I see that Celia says her granddaughter, Emma, created a website for teens, where to get the vaccine for adolescents age 12 and over. And she's posted that website. Thank you, Celia. I see that Alan March has posted all the links he was telling you about that will help you. It's the decision trees that will help you in making decisions for the future. So I'd copy those down, folks, as well as the dashboard and the Florida Department of Health weekly situation report. All right, and that's all we have. So we are open and have time for questions, comments, or sharing. If you'd like to just share your personal experiences, I know that helps a lot too. So if you want to raise your hand, or you would like to just raise your hand in person or virtually, put your little hand up, I'd be happy to call on you. All right, Celia, I see your hand is up. Could you unmute yourself?
Yep. Just to mention, my granddaughter was very motivated to do that. Her sister got COVID, a very mild case, thank goodness. And then her mom and her dad both got it, also mild cases, and she was the only one that didn't. So they were the first ones there when the vaccine became available, she's 17. So that's my comment. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Celia. Really appreciate that, and good for your granddaughter. That's awesome that she's doing that. All right, anybody else? Any other questions for our panelists, or just would like to share your own experiences? Mary.
I have can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I was really alarmed at looking at the numbers of children, and it's still going up, being admitted to the hospital, you know, in the past 2 weeks. And also particularly mentioning the number who are in critical care at this point, which again, there is a lot among the vaccine hesitant individuals who may not be aware of that. And I'm wondering if that is something that might impact people's decisions in some of the vaccine hesitant group, that the only protection for this is, since they can't have standard vaccines, the only protection for children is that the people around them be vaccinated. I know we all run into people who have some level of vaccine hesitancy or denial, or have seen it as a political issue. And I'm trying to find best ways to listen and to communicate with those people, and would like some suggestions from any of the panelists there.
I think finding out the specifics of what people have concerns about or questions about can be useful. You know, I know, Mary, you're very knowledgeable as a doctor, so you can probably address those directly. Some other folks in this group might need to refer them to the CDC or to their own doctors, but I think finding out specifically what their concerns are. But yes, I think talking about, we do that a lot for talking about adults getting vaccinated to protect kids. So we give pertussis vaccines to adults, for example, to protect the under 1-year-olds who get very sick and aren't fully vaccinated. So I think remembering or focusing on that circle of protection, because we are seeing, you know, the other scary thing that we've seen in the hospital is pregnant women with COVID delivering, and then their newborn, you know, being exposed immediately, and kind of all the risks that which we don't really know about yet very much, but there's a lot of circle protection argument that you probably could use, yes. And we still don't know, I don't know if anybody disagrees with me, but I haven't found concrete evidence that this is Delta is somehow more worrisome for children, but it is more infectious, and the children are the ones who are not vaccinated. So there is a higher risk for those children because they don't have the opportunity to be vaccinated.
I would say on that side, we're in a learning phase for COVID-19 Delta variant in children, and we need time to learn, and we need data to learn, and you know, pulling over guidelines and clinical expertise from adults is helpful, but I've already seen that it is presenting in different manifestations that are beyond just the pulmonary component. We're seeing other involvement, and we need data. We need to know the rates of encephalopathy, encephalitis from COVID, and
what to do about it,
and clinically how to manage it and how to avert it. So we need time.
Yeah, I want to go down a slightly different track in response to the question from Mary Applin. And that is that we have to get the information of these childhood illnesses out to the general public in a meaningful way. There needs to be an immediacy and a proximity factor here, that this could be my child, or this could be my grandchild. If it weren't otherwise, this could be me sort of concept. Our social media have contributed to the problem of misinformation. They operate on algorithms which are connected to computers that allow artificial intelligence to guide how the messages are transmitted to the general public. And it would be so wonderful if somehow we could connect some of these messages to some of the marketing and entertainment people who are familiar with these tools, these social media tools, to somehow reframe the information in a way that is acceptable and to which the general public is receptive. Because I love data, like Eric, and common love, but I recognize that a lot of people don't operate on data. The message has to be somehow articulated in a different manner. Thank you.
Yeah, personal stories work better. I've had more efficacy getting people to get flu shots, just talking about the sickest patient I ever took care of who was very young, than I have with just giving them factual information. So yes, personal stories, or I read about such and such in the newspaper.
And it's very difficult from a public health messaging standpoint to have a consistent message that goes for weeks, months, and even years when the variants are changing so quickly. So as we think about the risk benefit of all of these discussions, it's changing. And so when the public health person does need to change their message and their recommendations from one month to the next, it creates a lack of trust with the community. And I think the best example is maybe 2 weeks ago, we at UCG had a meeting about, it was on a Wednesday, and we had a meeting about planning how to do church, that Sunday. And we had the meeting, it was a good meeting, we had a good plan. And then it was that Friday that data started coming out from the CDC, and we could all feel things shift, and that risk benefit equation shift. And we saw it within those 3 days, 4 days within our own church. Wow. And the risk benefit calculation changed. And that's a very hard thing to engage with someone you don't know in a 3 or 4 minute interaction.
Virginia, go ahead, but you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm here. I also want to add that that growing, the developmental process for children is at best difficult. And when you add something like this, children need stability, predictability, consistency, and safety to be able to, learn and grow and pay attention in school. And a lot of children grow up without those things. But when you add this kind of thing in, when you add into the mix something that they're very aware of, and I've seen children who are willing to wear masks when their parents aren't, because they're much more aware, and they're afraid. And then children who are on the autistic spectrum are also very affected by this psychologically. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is that there are physical ramifications, and there long-term psychological ramifications, and long-term physical ones for children. And that's why we need to present a united front to be able to help them understand that we know what we're doing, and things are going to be handled in a constructive way. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you all for your responses there. I believe that Martha Walters has a question. Martha, could you unmute?
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this is a question, but it's also just kind of me rambling. I also have a 10-year-old, and he did every combination of schooling last year, in-person, DA, e-school, and it was a lot. And my husband's a teacher. Everybody had a rough year. So my concern this year is he went back in person because of the mask mandate. Obviously, mask wearing is not perfect at school. There's a lot of, not wearing them perfectly. Also, they don't wear them at lunch, which kind of scares me. Obviously, they have to eat, but they are eating inside, and just something I think about, around lunchtime, I'm nervous about. And my husband is a teacher at PK where they're not required to mask. So where I'm at right now is, yes, we have a temporary masking mandate, but we also have Governor DeSantis. I'm kind of wanting to put my son in e-school because there's a possibility that at any point, even if they vote to extend the mask mandate, at any point it could be, taken away because of the state government that we have. I know that e-school is not ideal, but I also know that I'm having a really hard time working, thinking about my son at school and what he might be picking up. And I don't know, I'm just kind of rambling about it, but I totally understand that developmentally this is not ideal for him. And last year really, really, really super sucked. But I think personally, between his mental health and my mental health, it might be the best option, even though it's a really, really crappy option. I don't know. And just the number of pediatric cases that I'm obviously just seeing from the dashboard, it's really terrifying to me. So I appreciate that you guys, especially the Nelsons, that you guys are here, like, who are frontline and who see it and who can sort of look at it almost objectively, but it's really hard when you're not a doctor. So
I would say, the good news is there's a lot of studies from a lot of different school districts that transmission in schools is very low with masks. So, it's obviously not zero, but it's very low. And so those are in school real trials. So they didn't, they weren't perfect little study children who never, wiped their noses or pulled their mask down below, or whatever. So I think you can be reassured by that as long as there is a mask mandate, that the school's a safe place for him, or for your child. And then I guess it also depends on your family makeup, right? So I don't know anything about the health of your family or who's high risk in that family. I would say for the typical family with a 10-year-old with, youngish, healthy-ish parents who are vaccinated, then you have to look at your child's learning and your child, how they're going to do at school versus at home. And I think it's very hard. But I do think we have to separate our own fears from our child's anxieties and fears, to make an objective decision about what's the better choice. So do you have anything to add?
No, 2 weeks ago, I was not optimistic that we would have a mask mandate for these 2 weeks. And those 2 weeks, a whole bunch of things are being done. One is kind of gathering the community effort on how to continue for advocating for masks. And I don't have a vote at any of these tables, but I am kind of quietly optimistic that the mask mandate will be extended for the duration of this massive surge. I think it's really hard to take that mask mandate away when you have more than 200 patients in the hospital, you have pediatric residents working on the adult service, you have your elective surgeries that would cause hospitalizations canceled, and that's a crisis. So I'm quietly optimistic that you won't get into that bind. And Lucia's been in school for this past year and she had a good year. So I think with the masks, you know, it's doable. And I was actually hoping that things would get to the point where we could go to optional masking for this fall. And then clearly that changed over the summer. But I'm hoping that public schools and private schools at some point will make that transition. It's just not right now.
And then the other thing about your husband, I guess I would say that, you know, I agree with that schematic in terms of who's at highest risk of transmission, whether you're wearing a mask or both people are wearing a mask. But I would also say, you know, we were taking care of people who are actively coughing and sick with COVID, and we were able to avoid getting it by wearing our, you know, having our good mask technique and good hand washing in the hospital. So I do think that it's possible. Most of the time, the kids who would show up to school wouldn't be the very symptomatic ones, you know, and so I do think it's possible to stay healthy yourself with good mask wearing.
Are there options for parents whose kids are in schools where the masking is not very consistent, or what options are there? You've mentioned a couple. One is go to a school where there's a mask mandate is actually enforced. And I also have some friends who basically have just decided that their child is having an extended summer vacation for 2 weeks until they find out what the state's going to do. Are there real options for, and of course, some people can afford to homeschool. A lot of people don't have that as an option. Or is there any consideration by the school board to bringing back e-learning at least for a short period of time? Until this, no, there's not, it's not going to happen. Huh? The board is completely averse to it.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, if you followed what happened at the University of Florida over the weekend between the local leadership and the state leadership, when I was talking about putting wood on the fire.
What happened? I'm sorry. Was this just yesterday?
It was Friday and Saturday. Basically, the university was leaning towards having some online hybrid options. And from a state level, that was shut down.
Kiboshed.
So it's
so you see that as county schools having to follow that same mandate then?
I mean, I think you work on what you can kind of control and do. And I think that for today, keeping within the bounds of the school is a tricky one. And trying to see names here. You know, I think the challenge of having a 10-year-old in a school that's having optional masking with a husband that's a teacher, that's a really tricky situation. And I'm just kind of quietly optimistic that we will keep the masks on for 6 weeks, hopefully.
Martha, I actually really want to thank you for your comments. That's exactly the kind of comment we're hoping for. No, exactly.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no, seriously. And that sort of sharing is exactly what we want here. That kind of honesty is wonderful. Yeah. Virginia, I didn't mean to stop you. Ginger, did you want to comment?
I just wanted to say that all of us on the panel are well informed, and we're not buying into, you know, fairy tales. And what Dr. March said about the media being brought in as a source of real information rather than misinformation needs to happen too, because I do work with people who are at the lower end of our economy, and they are responding to fear tactics, and they aren't vetting their sources, and they're not and I mean, like I said, it's going to depend on us being collective in our action rather than superstitious. And I want everyone to know the reality out there with people who aren't watching the news, who aren't looking for information, but listening to, listening to hearsay, basically, and or what somebody just decides to say. And there have been a lot of, this has been politicized too, and there have been a lot of inaccurate facts given to people. And I don't know how we solve that problem, but we are the emissaries that need to continue to do that. So I just felt like I had to say something. So
if I just put a quick postscript, I advocate a 11th commandment that
yes.
God saith, "You shall not politicize public health."
Amen.
Yes.
I'm all for an 11th commandment.
Thank
John?
you.
John, how
I guess my concern about the media is if it's not all the media. I mostly get my information from ABC News because that's the local channel, and I watch on CNN and public radio, public television. We're getting great information and very accurate information about it. I think the problem is I got brothers that mainly watch Fox News. Well, they're not getting great information. And unless Fox is going to change their approach, they're never going to get great information. And so part of it is there's a lot of good information out there, but people don't look at it. They look at other stuff. And I don't know how you make them change what they look at. And I don't think those Fox and those other channels, that's the way they make their money, is churning up controversy. And so I just don't know how you get around that.
panelists, any ideas? No.
I answer John's question. It would be take a mammoth move by our national legislatures to impose on the agency that controls the licenses for these stations. They have to have a federal permit. I don't know if it's the FCC or whatever agency it is, but actually have a requirement that they convey accurate information. And I don't know if that's in any of the legislation, any of the statutes or not. I doubt it.
I know it's out over time, and I'm wondering, I don't know if you guys have to leave, but I'm wondering if I could address another question if number one, does somebody have to leave? And could I address another question that I'm concerned about supporting the mental health of our kids who've been going through this and the post-traumatic stress disorder how we can as a society
right
support our kids. So first of all, is everybody staying or?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I am
a little bit restless at our house, but we can stay for a few more minutes.
Thank you.
Another question in the chat.
This is the question that I had, and essentially, Martha, I'm sorry, Martha's question. I think Martha's question was close to it too. She had a question.
Right, Martha, yeah, Martha's chat question, just so everybody who doesn't go on chat. One more question for the Nelsons. Do the positive masks in schools study results hold true for the Delta variant?
Good question. Do we know?
So the answer is we don't know.
No.
And when I was approaching a meeting on this past Monday, looking at basically the day before the beginning of school, and still in this kind of last minute attempt to create a consensus on what the plan was for the schools. And it wasn't that we were making a plan. I just needed to know what the plan was. And it seemed like there was kind of 3 different options on the table. And hopefully on Monday morning, something solidified in terms of this would be the plan for the county. And my main thing was, whatever the plan is, let's make sure we're in place to answer your question in 4 weeks, in 8 weeks. And there was a commitment around that. So hopefully we'll have the answer to your question in 4 weeks or 8 weeks. The major thing is that when you go from a reproductive number of 2, like Alan was saying, or 3, to a reproductive number of 7 or 10, you can just count in your head 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and go out from there, versus 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000. So, you know, the physics of a mask are going to work the same if it's Delta or the old one. It's just whatever particles are escaping around that mask, or those times where people are eating their corn dog, you know, what virus is going out in that moment. That's critical data, and we just don't have that. And that's why we need a little bit of time.
So, well, my question was kind of a nebulous one, in that, you know, I'm looking at this board, and it's a bunch of middle class, probably not too financially stressed people from what I'm seeing. And I know that the kids, the population of children who were exposed to COVID and this entire pandemic is not that, or maybe not representative. And I'm wondering how we as a society can, are you still hearing this, or?
Yeah.
Okay, how we as a society can support our kids of all, you know, economic strata, and think ahead of time about catching them up and supporting them as they get back into, you know, and maybe particularly if it's delayed again, and just thoughts that you probably had with that too, as you see pediatric patients. What should we be doing to make the world feel safer for our kids?
Can I say something?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping you'd address it.
I hear what you're saying, and I have always worked. I mean, to tell you the truth, I have absolutely no money, but I am educated, and because I've always worked in the trenches. I've always worked with people who are not, you know, who aren't wealthy, who are part of the country that wealthy people stand on, but don't value. And it's very difficult. They're more likely to respond to superstitious thinking just because of lack of education. And so the critical thinking that is needed for sorting this kind of thing out is not necessarily part of how they make decisions. And I'm not being pejorative. I'm being realistic, and I'm just saying that there's a whole part of this country, because of social polarization and wealth polarization, that are very, very vulnerable, much more vulnerable than we on this panel are. And I mean, I think that's the thing that I'm most concerned. I'm very concerned about these people. That's why I work with them. I don't think they get really good care. You know, I'm not talking about medical care. I'm just saying that, I mean, I don't even have insurance because I can't afford it. Medical insurance. So I'm just saying, there are some serious social problems that are adding to addressing collectively a problem that's affecting all of us.
I would agree with that. I would also, you know, practically speaking, there is going to be a point where transmission is low, you know, masks are removed, people feel safe coming, you know, moving around the community. And then if you have the ability, you know, volunteering in schools, tutoring, advocating for public schools and public school funding, I think are all going to be very, very important as we build up this whole generation of kids that's been so affected.
Yes,
thank you.
I agree.
And I also want to add to that, that we really have to advocate a social rehabilitation program.
Yes.
Where children can reestablish their mechanisms, and I'm not in that generation, to socialize. And I've always been, one of the best forms traditionally has been group therapy, where people can express concerns. And also group therapy sessions can, if the group develops a cohesiveness, they can continue to help, because I think this is going to be a long-term problem and it's not going to be solved with a quick solution. That we have to create the environment where we can somehow foster the social development in which our children are currently deficient.
I agree with that.
All right, well, thank you. And our thanks to all three of you very much for appearing today. And I'm sure everybody got a great deal out of it. I know I did. I really enjoyed hearing you speak and got a lot more information than I had coming in. So really want to thank you and look forward to one day seeing you around UCG again, or in any of the environments that we all, Gainesville's small. I'm sure we'll all see each other.
This is what I look like at Publix.
All right.
Hey, anybody want to volunteer while you're on right now? Great seminar committee.
Actually, I do.
Oh, cool.
You want to volunteer to be on the committee?
Yeah.
Well, are you, the only stipulation is you have to be a member. Are you a member?
UCG member.
Yeah.
I'm not, but that's the only church I go to when I go. So I don't know how to become I guess I need to become a member.
There you go.
I hate to break it to you.
Yes, be in touch with me, Ginger. That would be great.
I will.
Please.
So I was coming to church for three years before I became a member officially.
Okay.
It's attendance more than official.
Well, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you, Sue, for organizing this. Thanks to the seminar committee. You're doing great work.
Oh, thank you very much, Alan. Appreciate it. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see a lot of you back next week.
Okay. I'll get in touch with you soon.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Thanks for those of you who are on the committee, by the way. Ellen, and I guess Danielle is gone now. I wanted to thank her for her work on that. I think she and Eric have been involved with that as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Not the seminar committee, the COVID committee.
Yes.
Right.
Oh yeah, the COVID committee.
Yes. Thanks, Alan. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We got more work ahead of us.
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Not letting you off the hook.
Yeah, we need more therapists, by the way. This is all of those unemployed therapists I'm thinking about. I was talking with a kid the other day who lost his grandmother who had lived with them and a parent to COVID. And this kid was like 10 years old, about in that age range. And I'm sure that he did not get any contacts from hospice or was not placed in any sort of supportive grief group and of course the remaining parent was extremely stressed. And I'm just wondering how people survive like that. And it's been, we have a lot of the effects of COVID going in there. Anyway, thank you so much. This was really a good one. Thank you, Sue.
Excellent. Oh, it was excellent. Thank you to our presenters. And thank you, Ginger. I look forward to talking to you again. That's great.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
You too. All right.
All right.
See y'all.